Thank you all for coming. It's really exciting to see people from the community, from the school district, from the city, here in the same room to celebrate a successful initiative that we've been implementing for 10 years, Mission Promise Neighborhood, and to take that next step, take the lessons that we've learned and work collaboratively in other neighborhoods to see the same types of success in our city. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to one of the principal planners behind this event, School Board President Jenny Lam.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jenny Lam, President of the San Francisco Board of Education, and I'm thrilled to be here today with so many of our distinguished guests. First, I just want to recognize we have Supervisor Hillary Ronan, Supervisor Miriam Melgar. We have our community partners, also including Sarah Wan from Community Youth Center, to recognize our panelists that you'll be hearing a bit more from later this morning or afternoon. The president of the Harlem Children's Zone, Geoffrey Canada, so thrilled that he is going to be able to join us even though virtually. We also have Director Ingrid Mesquita, Director of the Development of Early Childhood. Maria Su, the Executive Director of Department of Children, Youth, and Their Families. Muriel Paz, the Executive Director of Good Samaritan. And Susan Ryan, the Principal of SFUSD's John O'Connell High School. I also want to recognize the Blue Meridian Foundation, who is a core supporter in making this a reality here in San Francisco. And also want to recognize Geoffrey's team in full force here as well. So we are thrilled. Welcome to San Francisco. We are deeply honored to have Mayor Breed here with us today to support this important work to revitalize partnerships between community, schools, and the city to address the needs of families and improve student learning outcomes. The past 2.5 years have been unparalleled, not only for our schools, public education, but our city. Now more than ever, we must explore innovative ways to support student learning, as well as our families, educators, and staff who show up every day ready to make a difference in a child's life. This is a monumentous gathering. I'm so moved that the City and County of San Francisco, the San Francisco Unified School District, and a cross-section of community-based organizations are here today to uplift the launch of Promise City, the first in its nation serving those who are most impacted by the opportunity gap and the persistent achievement gap. You will hear today about the initiative's track record, many of you who have been in this for the last 10 years, and the opportunities that will emerge from the expansion of the Promise Neighborhood model in San Francisco. And this networked, all-hands-on-deck approach, I've worked with many of you, and I know that is what you embody between the city, school district, and community. And we're going to aim that our students have what they need to activate their boundless potential and access opportunities from cradle to career. It's no secret that this is the work the San Francisco Board of Education is deeply committed to. In fact, as part of this work, we did something unprecedented in San Francisco's recent history. Over the course of 6 weeks, all 7 Board of Education members, yes, let me say that, all 7 of us, conducted an extensive community listening campaign to better understand the community's visions and values. And from the community's engagement as a board, we are reiterating our commitment to students and the focus of governing with that focus to our students. It is about setting ambitious goals and high expectations for the San Francisco public education system to fully deliver on the promise of a world-class education for every child enrolled in our schools. And it's the partnerships between community, schools, and the city to address those needs of families that are critical to this effort. And today's gathering is, again, that revitalization of that belief that we can all work together to help make sure that our families, students and families have what they need so they can hit those high marks on literacy and math and be ready for college or a career after they graduate from SFUSD. And Promise City is an example of how we can weave together that diverse tapestry of San Francisco that our students and our families furthest from opportunity can thrive. And we are grateful for the investment with the partnerships across the school district, the city, and the community. We cannot do this alone. For our students, the classroom experience is closely connected to the home and community experience, which is why being in service to the whole child advances our North Star at San Francisco Unified School District of improving student outcomes. And now I get the great honor to introduce our mayor. It was a privilege to serve as her education advisor, and this is how I know firsthand how deeply she cares about our students and their success. She's a fierce supporter of our public schools, and she's not only visible with her support, but she has and continues to put the resources and the investments from early education, mental health, academic supports, to college and career, and so very much more. So please join me in welcome Mayor Lyndon Breed.
Thank you, Jenny. It is really great to be here. And this obviously is important to San Francisco because we have members of the Board of Supervisors here. We have members of the Board of Education here. We have department heads and people who work in the city, the philanthropy world, the nonprofit world. And so I'm just really grateful to be here and to see all of you working towards this. Oh, I didn't know you would be here, Mario. Great to see you too. But it's really great to be here with all of you to really talk about, you know, our most important treasure, and that is our children and providing opportunities to ensure their success. It was back in 2012 when Meta received its first Promise Neighborhood implementation grant from the U.S. Department of Education. That was a really, really big deal. And with that funding, Meta's leadership in partnership with the city, school district, and a wide array of community-based organizations, Mission Promise was launched in that spirit, in that collaboration. And it really was developed, of course, as many of us know, to break the intergenerational cycle of poverty, to empower community and to connect families and the Mission District with resources. And they did so by identifying and linking youth and families to services, such as job training and placement, financial coaching, housing assistance, computer skills, early childhood education, learning, and college and career planning. Many families are fortunate enough to take these things for granted, but not all families in San Francisco are. So it was really pretty amazing to see things come together for the community in this way. And they applied a two-generational approach by working with both children and the caregivers. And their work is definitely paying off. We're seeing the results in Mission Promise Neighborhood. And since it was created, 30,000 people have been served through this program. 9,000 referrals for jobs, legal services, and healthcare have been made. Graduation rates target at high school students have increased, specifically in John O'Connell, from 68 to 86%. That has just been really great. And 71% of children supported by this program are ready for kindergarten. In the early childhood education program, they're ready for kindergarten as compared, we went from 71%, it used to be 48%. In the mission as a whole, and 71% in this program. Not only is our Promise Neighborhood showing really great results, but it's really a fantastic example of collaboration and what happens when we roll up our sleeves and truly work together as partners. Mission Promise Neighborhood brings together funding from the federal government, the state government, and the city. It leverages generous donations from Blue Meridian, thank you very much, and Crankstart, and so many great philanthropic leaders who continue to support important programs like this. They engage organizations who work with families, Instituto and Mission Graduates and Good Samaritan Center. It's a type of collaboration that we applaud and we welcome, and we're so excited to look at replicating, which is why San Francisco is not just committed to having one promised neighborhood, but committed to having a promised city. So I want to thank Blue Meridian especially for your support in helping to make this expansion a reality, because we are looking forward to seeing Promise expanded to Chinatown and the OMI neighborhoods. Throughout many of San Francisco's neighborhoods, we want to see these programs expanded so that families and communities can receive support from throughout the city. The Promise Neighborhood model is a way to amplify partnerships and to unite and promote a proven, effective model that we all know changes outcomes. So I'm looking forward to seeing it expanded in these neighborhoods, and finger crossed, even more neighborhoods to come. And we are so lucky to have with us today, although virtually, the brains behind this life-changing model. He is renowned for his ideas of advocacy and work in breaking the intergenerational cycle of poverty and bringing stakeholders together to improve the outcomes of children and families. In 1990, he founded Harlem Children's Zone, a model that has now been replicated across the country. In 2011, he was named to Time's 100 most influential people in the world. In 2014, he was named to Fortune's 50 greatest leaders in the world. And he is an author, advocate, and a visionary. So it is my pleasure, even though we wish you were here in person, to welcome Geoffrey Canada, who's joining us via Zoom for his wonderful remarks. Thank you and welcome to San Francisco, kinda.
Thank you, Mayor Breed. I am so excited to be here. I've been waiting 20 years for this moment. When Promise Neighborhood goes from one neighborhood to a whole city, this is historic. I test before I ever come to any meetings. I tested right before I was coming to San Francisco and unfortunately tested positive. So I'm really, really sad I can't be there, but I'm fine. I'm boosted and vaccinated and all of that kind of stuff. I just have a little sniffle, but nothing more. I'm ready to be there with Richard, Luis, and everybody. I have to admit, I'll tell you what this feels like to me, right? This is a big deal. A promised city is really a big deal. And I feel like I made it to the Super Bowl, and then the coach benched me. Right? Coach, put me in. I want to be with the team. I'm here at home, really excited about the work that you all are doing. And I have to say a word about why it's so important. You have a model that works. I cannot tell you how impressed I am with the work that Meta is doing in the Mission area. And I've seen it with my own eyes, and I will tell you it's extraordinary. I will also tell you, I have learned, I've been in this game a long time, but I have learned from the work of Meta, areas that if I were doing the Harlem Children's Zone all over again, I would do it like you all are doing it, because it's really quite extraordinary. This moment we're in, is important to me because there's nothing magical about the work, right? It takes a lot of hard work, people who are willing, but we know what to do for children. We actually know what to do for families. It's what we would do for our own children and our own families. And for some reason, for many decades, folks have tried to figure out how little could we do to support a child or a family that's struggling. Can we just do one little thing over here? How about Head Start? Is that enough? Or maybe we'll do teen pregnancy. Is that enough? What we are finding as the science is, you've got to support those young people and those families for a long period of time through each one of their developmental stages if you want to really give them an opportunity to be successful. You know, so many times we're doing what I would consider to be the minimum, right? So it's not like families don't benefit, but they can't reach their full potential. And the one thing that we know in the Harlem Children's Home is when you really build out this system the way you all have in the mission area, children will do better. I heard the mayor's remarks about outcomes. I just lead with those outcomes. That's important. That's what we care about. Here's the challenge and why it's so exciting. You are about to do something different. You're about to do something that connects the schools with the city, with community-based organizations. And while you might think, well, yeah, what's the big deal about that, Jeff? I'll tell you what the big deal is. In this country, I'm not talking about San Francisco, I'm not talking about California. In this country, all over this country, we have communities that have been failing in terms of the academic outcomes, the social emotional outcomes, the mental health outcomes for the children and families that live there. And schools are an essential part of that. But this is the problem that you all are solving. So I grew up in the South Bronx, which in the 50s was considered one of the worst urban neighborhoods in the country. That one of the lowest economic indicators for the community district it was in. It had the worst school in the city and some of the worst schools in the state of New York. I went to school 64 years ago. You fast forward 64 years, the South Bronx still has some of the worst schools in performance, some of the worst indicators for its children and families. And I'm not talking about over those 64 years, maybe we're talking 10, 20,000, 50,000, 100,000. The South Bronx is huge. I'm talking millions of kids. And here's the rub. If I go into a school today, they're operating the same way they were operating when I was in school 64 years ago. They start at the same time, they end at the same time, they teach the same way. Even though you've had decades and decades of failure, there is no initiative to change. There's no sense of, hey, this thing is not working, we need to try something new. You all are about to do something new. You're about to say, and I've said this around the country, in some of our neighborhoods, schools can't do it by themselves. We dump all of the challenges that communities face into the classroom and think that teacher is going to be able to solve all of those issues. There's no evidence that that is true. So you're about to scale, and you're scaling from success, which is critical. Don't scale anything that doesn't have proven evidence that it works. But scaling is hard. Why? Because communities are different. They have different cultural values, different leadership norms. So you've got to be flexible. But you can't be flexible and ignore the strategic imperatives and the real values that underlie this effort. I think if you again look at why is it so hard, you've got to have resources to get this work done. Too often we say to communities, fix these really tough problems, right? And here's a couple of dollars, good luck. That's not going to work. We need real investments that are allowing folks to provide the kind of supports our children really need. And we need consistent leadership and time. This time issue is important. None of this is done overnight. We've been at this 20 years, and you know what? Today, we're still solving challenges in the Harlem Children's Home. This is hard work, it takes time. You've got to give folks not just the resources, but the time to make this work. And then you've got to believe in continuous improvement. And this is hard because one of the things I've noticed that if you work in this field, and all of us who are committed to it, and you're putting in like a lot of time, a lot of energy, you don't want to come to grips with what you're doing is not working. And I've heard folks not face up to the facts that it's not working, but try to explain why we shouldn't be so concerned about it not working. I'll give you a Harlem Children's Own example. So we decided we were going to do an obesity initiative because there was an obesity epidemic in Harlem. Our kids were severely overweight. It was impacting our families. Folks were dying prematurely. They were losing their limbs from diabetes. It was a crisis. So we said, let's start this project to reduce the BMIs of our kids. And we're going to have thousands of kids in this project, but I didn't have anybody running. I was running the Harlem Children's Zone there. So I hired someone with a master's degree in nutritional science, and she was running the program, and I was asking, how's the program going? She said, oh, it's good. How's the program? Oh, it's good, it's good. Oh, finally I got the data. It wasn't good. The kids were all getting heavier. I was like, why are you saying this is good? The kids are getting heavier. She said, no, Jeff, you're thinking about this the wrong way. I said, well, what's the other way to think about it? We're changing, muscle, fat, and his weight, what they go on. And I was like, no, I'm not buying it. That's not like an excuse. You're out. I want somebody in with a PhD. Right? We got to solve this thing. Brought it in, 7 months later, I'm bringing the person in. I said, so how we doing, Jeff? Extraordinary. I said, great. Let me see the data. The kids are all getting heavier. She explained in more sophisticated words why I shouldn't be concerned about that. I was just like, no, y'all have the wrong idea. What I wanted to hear was, we tried that, it didn't work, we want to do something different. Don't tell me something that is failing is working and explain it away. This has sort of bedeviled our industry for many years. The thing I like about Meta and the work being done is that they are prepared to hold themselves accountable. They are prepared to look at the tough numbers and say, we understand where we are, where we have to go, and they're going to do so without making excuses. And that part has to be scaled in these new neighborhoods. Because if you're doing that in one place and you're not doing it in the other, I am telling you that it is going to struggle. I have found that it is always the adults that create these challenges, and not the children. In the end, if the adults do their job, the children, we know the children, they are who they are. Right? A 9-year-old, a 9-year-old. At 13, they're going to try to do nuts. We know that. The question is, as adults, are we prepared to do whatever it takes to get this work done? And now I just want to say this last thing. And I'm really serious about this. When, not if, when you scale this work to those other communities, you will be making history. A promised city, for real, a promised city, you will be making history. You will have taken this to the next level, and that's why I started off by saying I have been waiting for this moment for 20 years. And it is here. But now here, that's the good part, but here's the challenge. I have never known anyone to make history without sacrifice. I just think we've got to be prepared to do what's necessary to make this work. The investment that will be put in to overcome the challenges, I think is going to be worth it, because this will change not just San Francisco. It'll change more than San Francisco. You get this right, you will see this popping up in other cities in California. And then once that happens, you'll see this popping up in other places around the country. And this effort will change the lives of millions of children. But we have to get this right. And I think that's important. And it's just critically important for us to realize it's not going to be easy. Everything is not going to work. Sometimes we're going to try things and it's going to be an utter failure. And just so you understand, I'm not putting something on you all that we don't deal with ourselves at the Harlem Children's Home and the William Jewis Wilson Institute. You know, when Paul Tuff wrote his book, Whatever It Takes, about our work, he was a reporter from the Times. I gave him carte blanche. He could go look everything, you know, look at the dirty clothes and wherever they are at the Harlem Children's Home. He was writing his book. And the worst professional day of my career was when I could not open my high school because my middle school wasn't performing up to par. And I had promised these kids since they were little that they were going to stay with me and I was going to get them through high school and I was going to get them in college. And now I was going to have to go face my parents and my children and tell them that's not true. I can't keep that promise. I was in tears, literally, and I'm not kidding about this, all day. I love these kids, I love these parents. I did not want to disappoint them, and I was humiliated. And Paul Tuff said, who on their worst day in their professional career calls a reporter to come in and report? And let me tell you why I did that. Because I knew we were going to fix that problem. We did. It took us a year. We opened the high school the next year. Our kids have eliminated the achievement gap between black and white kids in Harlem. Our schools are successful. But the point I wanted to make was the point I want you all to hear today. We also failed miserably. It was tough. It was hard. We faced those facts. We changed our way of working. And we then went and got success. So anybody who thinks this is going to be a layup, we're all going to get together, everything's going to go great, it's all going to work in all the different ways, that's just not going to happen. The question is, what do you do when you're faced with that moment I was faced with? When things don't go well, when you've got to face folks and say, hey, it's not working. Do you at that point double down and fix it, continue to innovate, hold yourself accountable, or do you do what other folks do and excuse it? Let me tell you why you shouldn't be that concerned about it. I know what they do in Meta. They deal with the facts, they change, they innovate, they're running one of the best programs I've seen anywhere in the country, and I mean that. And I am 100% convinced that at this meeting, you all just look around, at this meeting, people will be talking about when everyone came together in San Francisco to create a promised city and help change California and help change the country. So with that, I'm going to say, God bless you all. I am so sorry I am not there with you, but I will be back. I will be back.
Words, your Whatever It Takes motto is something that we live by. I also want to thank Mayor Breed as she leaves for being part of bringing the Blue Meridian investment. Geoffrey, we know you're going to be back, you know, and we're looking forward to working with you as we begin this journey, this historic journey, as you said. And we look forward, and we're so appreciative that your staff is here to help us along the way as well. So thank you again just for your tireless championing of this work, working for our children, working for our families, working for our communities, and really you're changing the country along the way. Thank you. And so with that, I think, and Geoffrey, I know you're going to stick around for a little while, so I think with that, I will transition to Maria Sue. Welcome. Executive Director of DCYF, Maria Sue.
How do How do you follow that? Oh my gosh. Why? I told you, Richard, I didn't want to do this. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Geoffrey, for those words of wisdom and inspiration. So I do have written comments, but like right now, like my brain is just spinning because I feel like what Geoffrey just said and what our mayor just shared is coming to life here, right? It's that positive thinking, the whatever it takes. It's that we'll move mountains and everything for our kids. And I'm just so inspired and so privileged that I get to stand here with you all today. So just thank you so much. So once again, it's my name is Maria. Thank you to the mayor for her comments. Thank you to Board of Supervisor members for being here, Supervisor Melgar and Supervisor Ronan, and members of the Board of Education, President Lamb, and I know that Commissioner Moto Midi was here earlier, and then of course members of our school district leaders. Thank you so much for being here, and then of course our school, our community partnerships, because I think in this room this is what represents the best of the city. This is all of our good intentions that's here, and with that, I think that's what's going to move the needle for our kids. San Francisco has been a leader in bringing people together and bringing people to the center of the work because we center our work on our children. We also center our work on the data that we see. At the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, we promote practice and research-informed programs. We seed innovation and seek to address inequalities in access and opportunities. We provide leadership in developing high-quality programs, like all the CBOs here, and strong community partnerships in the interest of promoting positive outcomes. We prioritize the voice of our children, youth, and families, as well as our transitional age youth, in setting funding priorities and policies that are seated and based in equity frameworks. So really, really being intentional and surgical with how we allocate our funds and to who we allocate our funds for. Thinking back to February of 2020, when our mayor said that she was going to shut down the city, and we then entered a new world, a new reality for all of us. But she also said that it would take a village to address the wide range of learning needs that our city's children will experience. And once again, this is the village that she was talking about. We are the village. We are the ones who are going to be here to answer this call to action. Together, we will, as she said, roll up our sleeves and stand in the center of innovation and work together as city departments, school district leaders, community-based organizations, and families to ensure that our children grow up healthy, grow up happy, and be successful in our great city so that they can also benefit from the wealth that is in this city. You all, our CBOs, joined the department from the beginning in running programs during the pandemic, but even before the pandemic. You knew the importance of your role in this work. In 2020, when DCYF released our community needs assessment, as well as released the mayor's children and family recovery plan, we saw data that showed that our children were continuing to suffer. The types of needs that that we saw didn't really change. It's been consistent. This is what Geoffrey was talking about, year to year. It's the same needs. But it was the confluence of those needs, the way they stalked on top of each other, the way that it became overwhelming for families that needed the additional supports for food, that needed the additional supports for housing stability, that needed the additional supports to learn. It was all of that together that really moved us as a city, as a community, as a village, to then act. It is when we see data that we can no longer unsee, data that hurts our soul and our heart. And that's the data that moved us to take action. When we hear about the challenges families face in accessing services, even though we know that there are services all over the place, that's the type of experiences that made us coordinate better. These pandemic years have certainly not been ordinary. It has brought out the extraordinary in all of us, especially when it came to collaboration and innovative partnerships. That's what we are all here to do today. San Francisco has been a model for the nation on how to keep our residents safe, healthy, and resilient. And now we are modeling for the nation how we recover. Not recover to back then, but recover to better. We are grateful for everyone's efforts. We are proud to build this Promise City Village, to make San Francisco a great place to grow up as we emerge stronger from this pandemic and relentlessly rise. It is now my pleasure to pass the mic over to Richard Raya, the Chief Strategy Officer for Meta, who is going to share with us a little bit more about the results of the Mission Promise neighborhood efforts, as well as share with us this unveiling of us moving from Mission Promise neighborhood, or from Promise neighborhood, into a Promise City, a national leader on how we do work to serve our children, youth, and families. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria. And I just have to say that your partnership throughout all of this process, both at the Promise neighborhood level and with the Promise City vision, has made this all possible. We could not do this without city leadership that collaborates and buys in and leads on this. So thank you for that. And you were also instrumental in bringing this Blue Meridian investment to our community. So with that, I don't have a clicker, so I'm going to ask Kian over here to advance me to the next slide. So just to kind of ground everybody with how we got here. We started off, as was mentioned by the mayor, with the U.S. Department of Ed Promise Neighborhood Grant. It was a $30 million 5-year grant. That was back in 2012. We got 2 extension grants after that, but our funding was phasing down drastically. So we were facing a fiscal cliff. Through working with the city, we were able to bring in funding from Crankstart to keep us afloat, Strive Together, and the city also contributing. And then Blue Meridian Partners came in with a very large investment to sustain Mission Promise neighborhood for another 2 years, and then also begin this Promise City initiative. The state of California also has stepped in beginning this year with a $3 million investment in San Francisco's Mission Promise neighborhood. So all this work that we've been doing to tell our story to funders, to the state, to the federal government, it's all paid off because we have the data, we have the proof that our collaboration is working in our community. So next slide. So our federal grant 10 years ago was an education grant. But when we spoke to our parents about how can their kids get better academic outcomes, their first response was housing. We need access to stable housing. And so that and income inequality within San Francisco, within the Mission District, became a very big part of our approach. The average income of our families is about $25,000 a year in a neighborhood where it's the neighborhood average is closer to $150,000 a year. So there's some serious income inequality. Many of our families are living whole families to a single room or living in garages. And so that's where we are meeting families, and that's where we begin our academic support with them. So next slide. You all know the Mission District has lost about 8,000 Latino residents in the past 2 decades. We used to be the majority population in the Mission District. Now we are no longer the majority population. So that's also part of the environment that this initiative began in. Next slide. So we, as the Mission Promise neighborhood, created a collective response. So you'll see on your program that there are 15 partners that we work collaboratively with. We knew that the scale of the problems that we were facing and that our children were facing was going to require a collective response in order to match that scale. So you'll see the list of names on your program, but you'll get a visual here because the other piece of it is that it's place-based. It's focusing on intensifying resources and collaboration in a neighborhood, not just between CBOs, but with the school sites. We're at 9 schools in the Mission for bringing our wraparound supports to those schools. The city is a partner on that as well. We have a common agenda. We have a shared measurement system. We use results-based accountability. We also use, as much as we can, a shared referral system based on a Salesforce platform. And then we have continuous communication because that's what's needed to pivot when you need to pivot. When something's not working, as Geoffrey was saying, you need to recalibrate and redesign. We have, and then we have a backbone agency coordinating all that, which is Meta. So before you go from the slide again, I just want to say you can see the early learning centers with the swaddled babies, the schoolhouses, which are orange and black. The orange ones were our original schools. The black ones are where we expanded to a few years ago. And then you just get a sense of the community providers and where they're located. So next slide. It's all about the people. It's all about the trust that we build with each other, the relationships that we have with each other. These are the MPN partners who have made this successful. Next slide. So very simply, it's wraparound supports at the school sites and the early learning centers. So at the school sites, most of the school sites, we will have family success coaches who are actually embedded at the school sites. They're Meta employees, but they are family navigators, essentially. They work with families to connect them to all of the needs that they might have. We also have 2 on-site partners that we work with, IFR, Instituto Familiar de la Raza, to provide the mental health, to address the mental health needs of both students and the families, and also school staff sometimes as well. And then we have an after-school academic enrichment provider, either Mission Grads or Jamestown, as the 3rd partner at the school sites. And then, of course, we work with the school principals very closely. We are part of their community, and we work with the school wellness teams to make sure that there is coordination happening. So that's, and again, it is a 2-generation approach. As the mayor said, we work with the children and with the families. Next slide. So, like Geoffrey was saying, every neighborhood is different. The Mission has a culture, its own cultural lens. It's got a legacy of activism, of art, and we also, as I said earlier, have a problem with displacement. And so, with us being a Latino community, many of us have ties in the Southwest, ties to the land that can go back hundreds, if not thousands of years. And so this is something that a partner mentioned to us, a statewide partner, when he heard about our real estate work. He said, this is why your work in the Mission is so important, because we as Latinos are a land-based people without any land. Next, and that's one of our buildings right there, and that's art on one of our new buildings, which I will show you more of in a second. So next slide. So, like I said earlier, we had to get into the real estate work. So we used our Promise Neighborhood grant to build our capacity to actually start purchasing apartment buildings where our families were living and preserving the affordability so that they didn't get snapped up by market rate developers who would then evict the families. We also are building new construction, building new high-rises for families and for our providers to be in the ground floor retail space. So that's, again, the other takeaway from this, the geography. It is place-based. It's a concentrated investment and it's concentrated collaboration. This is tied to all of the Promise neighborhood work. Next slide. Oh, 1,400 units. Okay, so this is an example of one of the buildings that went from an empty lot through the community, working very closely with the city to carve out this space for the community. And this is one of our new buildings. And there's an early learning center on the ground floor, retail, who is one of our partners. And there's a youth development organization, community organizing organization, but it's almost like a zone, a Harlem children's zone in a way, but it's a little bit different because we're all different entities. But we're creating a sort of a children's zone in the mission through this collective work. Next slide. This is the back of that building, and again, all of this work is rooted in the culture of the neighborhood. And so this is Yolanda Lopez, who recently passed away, but was a longtime mission artist and activist, a very big part of the Chicano movement in the 60s and 70s. And you'll see the Black Panther next to her, showing just the historic collaboration between the Black Civil Rights Movement and the Chicano movement. I'm getting the time warning here. But what I want to say here is that when folks are driving into the mission, that this is what they see. And I just have to say, and I think Geoffrey said this earlier, the culture of the place is a big part of the work. Next slide. So the results, we serve about 12,000 folks annually. Because we are an economic development agency, that's still part of our DNA, even though we're doing cradle to career work in partnership with many of the partners here. So we helped families process $5 million in tax returns. You already know we did 1,400 affordable units. And then our medical home rate went from 61% to 80%. Our kinder readiness rate, as was mentioned by the mayor, is 71% compared to the neighborhood average of 47%. And then our graduation rate at John O'Connell went from 68% to 86%. Next slide. And then COVID. We feel that the culture of collaboration and trust that we had built during before the pandemic helped us respond collaboratively and at scale when the pandemic hit. Latinos were 50% of the positive cases when the pandemic first hit, even though we're only 15% of the city, and we attribute that to families, having no other choice but to live in overcrowded housing and therefore not being able to isolate, and also being frontline workers who had to go to work and get exposed and keep working even when they were sick. So a variety of reasons. But our network was able to do vaccine outreach to 11,800 residents. We provided $8 million in income relief to 6,000 families, and this was in very close partnership with the city. The city actually called us and said, we need your database to be able to reach these families who are ineligible for federal resources. And we built a system with the city and philanthropy to distribute this money quickly. We did the same thing with the small businesses in our community. And we also helped our families do rental relief applications. Next slide. Kind of like what Maria was saying, we're gonna, as we come out of the pandemic, we want a recovery, but we want an equitable recovery. So we know that COVID highlighted disparities in our communities. But we also saw that systems could come together rapidly. Philanthropy, the city, the school district, the community, to address the inequities. So now is the time for us to actually build on that collaborative muscle that we developed over the past couple of years. And our position on this is that this is actually good government. It's community engaged, it's data driven, it's accountable to results. And it's also, as the mayor said, it takes a village to get this work done. It's about us seeing each other as neighbors. It's about trusting each other. It's about helping each other. Next slide. So, Promise City. So part of the equitable recovery is scaling from a Promise neighborhood to Promise City. Part of this work is going to require multiracial collaboration. We just have to be explicit about that. Again, it is systems alignment, getting the school district and the city and the community and philanthropy all in alignment, and just developing that collaborative muscle that we've already been building. Meta is launching an Equitable Recovery Institute to help support the Promise City initiative. We're going to have a team of 3 folks that are helping the new Promise neighborhood initiatives develop their initiatives. And we are going to continue to focus on state and federal advocacy to increase the pot of money for state from the state and the federal government. So like I said, the governor has already put $3 million in for Mission Promise Neighborhood, but we think there should be more for more Promise Neighborhoods. We also think the federal pot for Promise Neighborhood funding should be increased from 100 million to 300 or 400 million because the demand is so high for more Promise Neighborhoods. Next slide. So we're working on that. We're working on that with Geoffrey's team, actually. Promise City. So Promise Neighborhood plans in 3 new communities. That's what the Blue Meridian investment is asking us to do and is funding us to do, is to work with 3 new communities to create plans. So we've already started in D11. We've submitted, maybe last month, we submitted a proposal to the federal government for a Promise Neighborhood in District 11, the Excelsior OMI community. We are now going to begin a planning initiative with Chinatown, with CYC. CYC will be the lead agency there. We will be supporting them. Meta is not going to step into another community and assume a leadership role when that is not where we come from. So we're really excited that Sarah Wan is here from CYC. Thank you. And will be leading this. Community is to be determined. It's important to acknowledge that these are all right now communities of color that have been previously redlined. So our work is actually going to start addressing legacies of inequity within our city. And I think we're going to be explicit and intentional about that. Again, this is aligning with the mayor's recovery plan. The mayor has an extensive recovery plan. Much of it overlaps very well with the principles of a Promise Neighborhood, especially wraparound supportive services, bringing services closer to the community. And so we're going to work hand in hand with the city to make that happen. The last 2 things that we're going to do as part of this Blue Meridian investment is we've committed to organizing in parents and youth for engagement and leadership. And we're going to develop a policy platform for academic and anti-poverty goals and cultural placekeeping. Next slide. So just the nitty-gritty, we're formally launching with the folks that are in the room, the mayor, the school board president, community leaders, and Geoffrey Canada. We're in the process of finalizing MOUs. We actually just finalized the MOU with CYC this week. We're going to begin needs assessments and monthly community planning meetings as part of a 2-year work plan. And we're going to try to position these 3 new Promise Neighborhood plans for funding. We're hoping that Blue Meridian likes what they see and will play a role in that. We're going to continue going to the state and the federal government as well to fund these Promise Neighborhood plans that we will be creating. Next slide. I just want to let you know this, and this is the second to last slide. We're not doing this work alone. We have California partners. This is actually the Promise Neighborhood up that the Yurok tribe in Klamath has just beginning, and this is what it's all about. It's all about the kids. We're really excited to have 2 Native American Promise-led Promise Neighborhoods in California, and we're part of a California Promise Neighborhood network with them for a total of 5. Is it 6 now? 6 now. 6 Promise Neighborhoods in California. So we're jointly planning and supporting each other and advocating together. We're also part of a larger California Cradle to Career Coalition and the End Child Poverty in California campaign, which has given us access to the governor and other legislators to move our agenda. And then we have our national partners, Harlem Children's Zone, the William Julius Wilson Institute, Strive Together, and PolicyLink. So this is the last slide. We're excited about Promise City. We think it can build on what's working. It can revitalize things that we want revitalized, partnerships. And it can also help us just reshape the relationship between the community and the city and schools. And as I said, we think it's the future of government. And that's it. I believe that's it. I think we are going to move into a panel discussion now, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right? Okay. I will turn it over to Hong Ming.
Thank you, Richard. And good afternoon, everyone. I know that was such an invigorating set of information we just got. I'm going to invite everyone, if you are able, to kind of do a quick stretch with me. It is that time. We all had lunch, thank you. If you can, get up, do a quick stretch, Deep breath in. Deep breath out. All right. And we're going to get settled, and I'm going to invite our panelists to come up to join us. And just a quick introduction. My name is Hangmei Peng. I'm the interim head of communications and external affairs at the San Francisco Unified School District. I want to invite President of the San Francisco Board of Education, Jenny Lam, Executive Director of Department of Early Childhood, Ms. Ingrid Mesquitas, Mario Paz, Executive Director of Good Samaritan, Susan Ryan, Principal of John O'Connell High School, and he said he'd be back, so we're taking him up on it. Mr. Geoffrey Canada, who needs no introduction. And before we jump in, I just wanted to extend a big thank you to Mayor London Breed, our Board of Supervisors, and Supervisor Malgar and Ronan in particular who are here, Meta for inviting us into this conversation, and also Maria Sue and Ingrid Mesquita for their partnership from city departments, and also my colleagues, the head of PK8, Ms. Demetrius Rice-Mitchell, who is here today, and Assistant Superintendent Jason Hanan for their thought partnership in pulling this panel together. You know, about a few weeks ago, Jenny, President Lam, she reached out and was like, you know, there is a really amazing opportunity for us to have a conversation about what it means to be in partnership and engage at this particular moment in the city of San Francisco in service of our kids and families. And I said, that's fantastic. Let's have a conversation. Let's have a dialogue about this because, you know, I think we heard earlier about, you know, Promise Neighborhood Model, the historic launch of Promise City, and we also heard that it wasn't going to be easy, right? And so as we are kicking off the scaling, I'm actually going to, you know, pick up from where you left off, Geoffrey, if I may, about, you know, what does this conversation mean in the context of the launch of Promise City as it relates to the national conversation around how do we recover coming out of a pandemic as we are still dealing with the effects of the pandemic as it relates to our children, our families, especially those most marginalized?
Thank you for the question. And this is, to me, an opportunity for us to do it right. You know, what Bloomery and Partners is doing in collaboration with you all and other places around the country is we're trying to eliminate the competition. You know, there's a group of catalytic supports that have never worked with one another, strive together, opportunity agenda, policy link. All of us are working in support of the work you all are doing on the ground here in San Francisco. We want to model the kind of collaborative work that it takes to really solve tough and complicated issues. We also want to make sure that there's sufficient resources so that folks can really meet these very high standards that we have. So a group of us are just getting used to working with one another, so, you know, give us a little time. But we are all trying to figure out what do we do best? What do we not really want to do as well, but we know somebody else who can do it actually better? How do we collaborate and make sure that we're bringing the best thinking to this field? The way that we're thinking about it writ large is we want examples for America. We want people to be able to come in and look and see and say, oh yes, I see what you all are doing. We should be doing the same kind of thing in Detroit, or we should be doing the same kind of thing in Chicago. So we're looking for quality, and by the way, we think we found the best organizations around the country who are on the ground doing this, and I would dare say that Meta is in that top quadrant of folks anywhere in America, around the world, who's actually trying to do this. So that doesn't mean it's going to be easy, or it doesn't mean it's a layup, or it doesn't mean we have all the answers. What we're trying to do is assemble a set of resources so folks can come and say, hey, can you help me with this kind of problem? Can you help me with that kind of problem? I think that's how we're going to move this field forward, and this is just the beginning.
Thank you so much. And we really do appreciate and are grateful for this collaboration and also the investment around this model to Blue Meridian. And you know, I think the seminal work of Harlem Children's Zone in informing the models as we iterate. And also I'm hearing that this is about being able to set precedents, right? Like being able to lift up best practices. And I want to bring Jenny into this conversation around alignment with the San Francisco context in relation to student outcomes. We've heard about, you know, data. We've heard about, you know, how are we going to measure that we're moving the needle? And you mentioned in your opening remarks leading the good work on good governance to our student outcomes on the Board of Education. So can you share a little bit about how this particular model would align with the North Star of student outcomes? What does that mean?
Yes, sure thing. And before I launch right into the SFUSD's vision alignment, Geoffrey, I just need to acknowledge and thank you. When we met over the summer, I pulled you aside, I had a one-on-one, and I said to you, the Board of Education is going to embark on something historical that hasn't done in the last 20 years. We're going to put the stake in the ground around student outcomes. And I just want to share with you, Geoffrey, personally, that you are not only an inspiration, but you have given me what I need to be unapologetic about delivering what our children deserve in San Francisco. So I just want to acknowledge and thank you to the audience today. And with that, the Board of Education Tuesday night, this upcoming Tuesday night, will be adopting its 5 years goals. And since I've been a parent, an advocate, now serving on the school board since 2019, we are going to be landing on student outcomes that I frankly have not seen. And I was just told by our national coaches yesterday that we need to embody this in San Francisco because in the state of California, there's no other urban school district that is landing on this student outcomes framework. And what we're looking at around that vision alignment is around literacy outcomes. And just on Saturday, yes, I make my colleagues work on Saturdays and throughout the summer around literacy outcomes. And for example, the third grade proficiency, we are going to be bumping it to 70% proficiency. And what that means is that it will be particularly also focusing on the students that we know have had from furthest opportunity, which are our Black, Latino, and Pacific Islander students. And we're going to have to align those resources because our educators, our site leaders have been doing everything possible each and every day. And so what that means is that our superintendent, our new superintendent, Superintendent Wayne, who couldn't be with us today, he's across the country meeting with our national coaches of the Council of Great City Schools on their conference around how we're going to really look at delivering on that promise and that funding and those resources that are needed. And we're going to be monitoring that as a school board consistently, spending more than 50% of our school board time on where we are in delivering on those outcomes. So that's just one example around the literacy. There's also a math goal and what that really means in preparing our students to their high school experience in the time when they're beyond graduated with us in SFUSD, and the college and career preparedness. I'm really excited to hear more for Susan to share the really amazing work happening at John O'Connell. So just wanted to overall, lay that groundwork around that vision alignment. And what we've seen, and I know so many of you, thank you for working with our schools, thank you for working with our leaders, but this is a systems approach. This is a systems commitment from SFUSD. That it's no longer that community partners, you need to chase down and thanking, the amazing site leaders or the assistant principals that are going to be all in. But this is a systems approach, and this is the only way we're going to really make that difference around the opportunity, the achievement gap from our students who've been, again, our Black, Latino, our English learners, and our Pacific Islander students.
Thank you so much. And you mentioned so many key points that anchors our work, and not just in the city, right? Because I think as we are also seeing this in relation to some of the policies that are emerging from the state universal TK, for example, there being so many opportunities for us to think about scaling. And this is where I want to invite Ingrid to the conversation when we're talking about cradle to career. We know that on the statewide level, on the city levels, there are tremendous opportunities for how this vision, this model could take shape, especially for our youngest learners. And so in the context of school readiness, learning and development, what are some of the synergies that you're seeing in relation to Promise, in relation to how we're evolving in this field?
Thank you. Buenas tardes. This is, yes, it's a historic time where investment like no other is being made in early care and education, statewide and in the city especially. We're systems building, but we're also connecting these systems, and that's really what it's about. Early learning is not just about offering a space around early care and education for a parent to work. That's important. But it's also the key time when children are developing very rapidly. We all know about the science. 90% of our brain gets developed by the age of 3. But we don't take this opportunity to really start thinking about, well, what does that look like when that child is in that early learning space? And what the Promise City allows us to do is really amplify what we've been talking a lot for the last 20 years. Mario, we've been in this probably longer, where the research actually meets the practice, which looks into implementation, and it's designed based on children's needs. Why Mission Promise Neighborhood was so successful around school readiness is because it really looked at children intently. It looked at the parents and what the needs of the parents were. This is when we talk about whole child. And this is what early care and education is. It's about the whole child that lives within the context of their community and their family. And so when we see Abriendo Puertas, a program that's designed as 2Gen, it's about parent leadership in the early learning space as the child is also developing their learning and the development, early literacy, all of those things, the parent is as well. It's a parallel process. We also think about mental health and child's mental health around attachment and bonding, not just with their parent, but also with the caregiver that's there. So there's all of these things that come together that support children's development. And this is what early learning is about. This is what early childcare and education should look like. It's about approaching it as a whole child. And one of the other areas that I think that we have synergies around is that we are now talking about it being a village in plain, simple language. But the reality is that we all know that this is about intersectionality. It's about housing, economics, it's about learning, it's about access, it's about opportunity. And so when we put all of these things together for children in a package where families have the navigation, they have the support to be able to put their children in really high quality settings, when it really matters that they're actually getting the support not only in their language, but also in their cultural, right, reference. That's what makes a difference, and that's what advances us. So this is super exciting. Believe me, I've been very nerdy about this right now because I'm totally geeking out about all the possibilities, especially with the support of the district, with also our sister departments, that we're here and looking at this from cradle to career in a real tangible way.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. I feel so energized, by that. I think really honing in on this point around, the whole child, right? Like, what does that look like when we're talking about social emotional learning, mental health and wellness supports, and what does that look like in practice? And so, Maria, I want to invite you into the conversation, talking a little bit about your work, and Good Samaritan in terms of how does the rubber meet the road?
Okay. Thank you. And I'd like to start, first of all, I'm going to be evoking Geoffrey's name quite a bit, because the first thing I think we have to really embrace is understand that every initiative, every policy begins with a set of values and guiding principles, and then a theory of change, right? So Geoffrey, a long time ago, He didn't like what he was seeing in his community. Because he, like I, and everyone here believes that every child deserves the opportunity to succeed and reach their full potential. Every child. And you have to really, really believe that. I mean, really believe it, right, Geoffrey? You have to really believe it. Every child in every school should be safe, should be nurtured, supported, challenged, and healthy. Every child. Okay. That's the promise that we want to make. That's the vision. That's the promise. Every child. And the theory of change is what we've all learned is that we have to have a holistic approach. It really, really, really does take a village. You know, that's overused, but it really does. There's just no other way if we're going to achieve that outcome. I'm so happy to hear what Jenny has shared and what Ingrid has shared with Maria. We've been working on this for a long time. And I want to evoke Geoffrey again. We can't be afraid to fail. We're going to make mistakes, but we got to acknowledge them, and we got to call them out each and every day because we cannot fail our children anymore. So how do we do the work? The holistic approach understands that there's structural inequities and issues that are affecting our families. Guess what? A child can't learn if they go to school hungry. A child's not going to learn if they don't have stable housing, if their parents are unemployed or underemployed. That's the holistic approach. That's a two-generation strategy. We know that the best advocates for children are their parents. We need to prepare them to be the great advocates, not just in the 0 to 5, which we do a lot of work. We're getting children ready for school. We've made a commitment in this city to get ready for school. Now we need the schools to be ready for our children. It's a two-way street. That's the commitment that we need to make. And that's how we're going to get there. It's parents working, being the strong advocates, working with teachers. We need to support our teachers. We know, I see it every day. This is personal to me because I talk to the children. I'm like Geoffrey. I love our parents. I love our children. And, you know, I get emotional because some of them are really struggling. They're really struggling. And it's hard to believe in a city with so many resources. Why does a child have to continue to struggle? Why does the family have to continue to struggle? So that's the promise. And so we're going to do it working collectively. And that's why what Meta transformed itself through the Mission Promise neighborhood, because we realized, through partners, we needed to deal with the structural issues. We create more affordable housing. Make sure every child has a medical home. That's why we have health partners, Mission Health Center, right? Because we found out that a lot of children didn't have a medical home. And that really surfaced during the pandemic. It was crazy. So these are all the things that we're working together. That's how we're doing the work. And day to day, my staff understands that that child is part of a family, it's part of a community, and we need to create all the supports around that child to make sure they succeed and put every effort. It's hard work, you guys. It's super hard. Our staffs are tired. It's hard work. But we can't give up. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Mario. And I just want to name, right, that it is about transformation. It is about transformation and how we are able to leverage and continue to innovate on strategies. And you know, I think what was really powerful is thinking about the school as a site where a lot of this transformation is happening. So I want to invite Susan, if you can share some of your work at John O'Connell and what does that look like?
Absolutely. First, I feel so lucky to have been part of the Mission Promise neighborhood work just because I have the good fortune of working at O'Connell. We are a community school, and everything that I've heard here today and seeing all the faces of people that have supported us, all of our partnerships, it is a struggle right now. High school is the place to be. The OC slogan is OC is the place to be. And the reason high school is so critical is because it's the place where you said the rubber meets the road, but it's also the place where the theory meets the teenagers. And the teenagers are beautiful, but they are struggling. I can't emphasize enough the toll that this pandemic has taken on our teens. Mental health needs unmet, learning loss. And for us, really revitalizing those partnerships around learning and also around wellness, making sure that we have partners for college and career. So one of the things O'Connell has done differently because of our resources, so Jenny, I'm going to follow up with you. I cannot wait to find out more about these resources that are coming for teenagers, is making sure that we build our programs around our student need. So we have teams working with our young people in the classroom that include embedded partners. So folks from Mission Graduates, from Urban Services, from JVS, are in the classroom planning and delivering instruction and making sure students don't fall through the cracks. And Mission Promise Neighborhood has funded our student success coaches, and representation really, really, really matters. I appreciate what Geoffrey Canada said about the master's degrees and the PhDs didn't solve the obesity problem. They're not solving any high school problems either, to be frank. So making sure that our educators who are working already in Latino Task Force and other partnerships have a place in the school day in the classroom. Now, we've moved away from the model of support folks being in a separate office because that doesn't reach students. And so we have our students in houses and pathways that are looping for 2 years. That means you have the same students and the same educators for 2 years. We have support from 100% College Prep, making sure that we have the Public Utilities Commission. I really want to give them a shout out because the only organization I've ever worked with that is funding teacher planning time. You can't wrap your head around these challenges without diverse folks at the table from the community, educators of color, people with roots in San Francisco, and teachers with time to plan together. And I appreciate that Geoffrey talked about time in addition to resources. So that has been super, super critical for us. And I like to talk about a ladder for students to climb. You have to provide a connection. Students need to feel that connection. So we just had a student focus group that was talking about connection being the thing that transforms their experience. And so making sure that our students, yes, they have internships. Yes, we have integrated pathways, but it's the people that we're trying to bring in as community members doing all of this work from cradle to career. But it is very, very challenging in high schools right now. I think the student success coach model really needs to be explored further. One example is we have a student success coach who is our after-school academic coordinator, but she's also in the classroom. And she has seen 8 graduating classes go through now, helping them understand ethnic studies, helping them understand English, the literacy that Jenny was talking about, having folks who are in charge of FAFSA applications and college scholarships, also working with 9th graders in science classes, right? Helping the teacher build out that curriculum. So important. Another feature that I think has been very transformative, especially when we think about the healing that needs to happen. We're really struggling with wellness right now. All the helping professions are feeling the burnout. We have a funded but unstaffed nursing position. And making sure that we have wellness partnerships, a Mission Neighborhood Health Center trying to help us figure out how can we build out an intermittent clinic because we're not able to hire in the district pay scale. It's not high enough, all these barriers that you all know about. Also, the mayor's funding and Mission Graduates helping us have a position that we call a life counselor. Oyande Chambers, he was formerly at SVIP. A person who is so truly in the community that we don't even need to know all of the conversations he's having with young people because they won't have the same conversations with us, and making sure that he can help them really work through the many layers of challenges they're facing. And other people like that yes, your physics teacher is critical, and kids in this focus group, they shouted out their science teachers, their English teachers. But it's also the people with similar backgrounds from the community who are continuing to do this work as part of Mission Promise that need to be in the classrooms.
And that's such an important piece. I just really want to hone in on that piece in terms of, cultural and linguistic competency and sort of bringing it back, right, to this idea of the community and being able to really come together around partnerships to make our public education better, to really help support our students and families, 2-generational approach, right? And we are unfortunately coming up against time. So I'm going to throw one last closing question for the panel. And any of you, this is popcorn, you can pop in and share your thoughts. So this is a two-part question for you. We talked about reinvigorating public education in San Francisco. So vigor means physical strength and good health. It also means effort, energy, and enthusiasm, right? So what does it mean to you to reinvigorate public education, to reinvigorate our communities, and to reinvigorate partnerships in San Francisco?
Well, I'll begin. For me, it suggests that we have to start with ourselves. We have to reinvigorate ourselves. We have to be up for this task. It is a lot of work to make these connections happen, to keep these partnerships going, to come up with new strategies, to deal with all the personalities at the school, at the city, at the community-based organization. I think it starts with us. I think we have to center ourselves, we have to focus ourselves, and we have to find our higher power if we're going to go out and tackle this crisis our young people are in. Because this is not the same San Francisco that existed 4 years ago. We don't want what was then, we want better. But it is going to be harder than it was. And that means that we have to be up for it. So we have to eat right, we have to sleep right, we have to make sure that we are practicing our own mindfulness so we're prepared to tackle these systems in a way that leads us forward.
Thank you so much. Other panelists? Ingrid.
I'll go. As a district alumni from K to 12, I think that, public education for me has always been a very interesting dynamic. Because one of the things that was addressed here today is that, Promise Neighborhood really is looking at red line communities, right? Having grown up in the Mission, many years ago. I think for me, what a reinvigorated public education system looks like, at least in San Francisco, is one that is an integrated one. We have very segregated schools. I come from segregated schools, come from segregated communities. And I think that that is what will lead towards school success, because then race is no longer a predictor for your outcome.
Thank you. I think I'll just add to that we have to see every child every day. I mean, really, really see them every day. I think so it starts with us, and then it starts by them knowing that they have adults that care about them. I call it a conspiracy of caring adults. I think that's what Geoffrey's created, right? It's a conspiracy where we see the child every day, and we're going to say, we're going to do everything in our power to make sure you can succeed.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to put some real talk out there. Our national coaches have been working with the Board of Education, and AJ will lead with children, student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change. We have been through a lot as a city over the last, I'm now on my 23rd year living here in San Francisco. Spent 20 years working in community, both in San Francisco and in Oakland, my hometown. And there is a tremendous healing and trust building that needs to happen right now. And I understand our communities have felt isolated, they have been hurt, and at the same time, we have to come together. And the people in this room are the ones who can lead and have led and will continue to lead and model. And so that is my ask and that is my reflection at this time around that transformation and being reinvigorated. I want to see my city, I want to see our schools to really coming together in a deep and real way moving forward.
Thank you so much. And
Yeah.
last word?
Definitely, I agree, Ingrid. The segregation is just shameful and not addressed, and we see that every day. I think also, Mario, the seeing students is the most beautiful part of the job, and all the other barriers, the systems that are not functioning correctly in the district, all the other isms that we have out there, make it really hard for our educators. I really appreciate what you said about people are struggling, right? Educators are really struggling. I think outcomes is the answer, and I want to make sure that we don't oversimplify outcomes to just be test scores. That we really think about what does it look like to be ready for college and career. And at O'Connell, for us, we have one little slice of that, and it's being able to tackle a real world problem, do the research, pull on your internship experience, and then present an innovative real world solution, and we call that our senior capstone. And to see the family and industry partners and community members sitting in the audience and helping to evaluate, has this young person shown the readiness they need to move on to college and a career? That's our mission, both college and a career, which I really hold tightly. But if we don't have the conversation with the students and the families and the community as to what do the outcomes need to look like, that's the only question I have. Is that the outcomes have to be community outcomes, and I think that's something that MPN holds dear. And how do we build accountability for schools where kids can show what they know in multiple ways, but they're part of designing their own moment of brilliance?
Yes, and it's about igniting our students' potential, right? Their greatest, deepest potential. Please join me in thanking our wonderful panelists and this robust discussion. I learned a lot today. Thank you so much. Geoffrey Canada, Susan Ryan, Jenny Lam, Ingrid Mesquita, and Mario Paz. I'm going to turn it back over to Richard. Or, just kidding, you get a little bit more time with me and the panelists. All right, so we're going to open this up to Q&A.
Do we get to ask the questions?
Oh. Anybody? Questions? Yes.
So in the practice of good governance, the Board of Education is at the policy level. So I think this is particularly an implementation question. So I would love for our district leadership to also share a bit about some examples.
Bringing to the stage.
Yes.
Superintendent Anon.
Can you please restate your question? Thank you for that. And I'm not going to take up too much time, but I would love to connect with you even afterwards. Over the past year, so I've actually had the fortunate opportunity to collaborate with Meta. One of my schools has actually been a part of MPN, and I have several other schools, including Monroe, who would be factored in as part of this work. And so an important piece, as you've heard, is the fact that this needs to be community-led and community. And so in the upcoming months, Monroe is actually a school that's been identified, not just in this grant, but actually received the California Community Schools Partnership Program grant. And so, in fact, tomorrow we're having interviews for a director of that grant. So I say this all to say that there will be multiple opportunities throughout for the community to engage with site leadership, community partners to engage in what we call like a community asset mapping or hopes and needs assessment, which needs to be robust and really should hit 100% of all students and families and staff to really help shape the vision for the school. So I'm actually really looking forward to this. It's very exciting. I'm also a product of San Francisco Unified. My parents actually met as students here in high school. They are not originally from the city or the country. So for me, this is my home and our home. And so I'm really excited to dig in. It's nice to meet you too. So I'll share contact info afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, other questions? Yes?
And I'm loud. So at Mission Graduates, we have seen our educators as frontline workers who have really had challenges themselves in supporting their students during the pandemic and beyond, as we are getting back to working with the students and the families in real time. And so I'm curious to what everyone has seen as keys to success to help to support our employees who are supporting the families as we are helping to rebuild and recover.
Good start. I would say our team approach that I mentioned has been so essential because all of us, myself included, we have these moments or long periods, all these challenges piling up. And so instead of having one adult for 32 students, which is like having a ladder made out of single strings, and if one string breaks, the whole ladder collapses, having a team approach so that teachers can use the time and space over a 2-hour block of time to meet the students' needs and also to, if needed, cover for each other. It has been so critical. I really think that is something the district needs to look at more broadly because every individual can feel like you're crumbling, and if that's all the child has is either that individual or a sub, we will never be able to deliver on any promises to our kids.
Really about that reinforcement. Anyone else would like to speak to this question?
Sure. Thank you for your question. It's something that we worry about all the time because we see how difficult it's been for our staff in the last 3 years, the secondary trauma, all the things they've seen and heard and witnessed, all the hard work. It's really, really tough. We've tried our best to put together a wellness approach to try to make sure our staff can support each other, can love each other, can cry together when they need to cry because it's been that bad for many of them, right? And it's everything that they have to carry. And so we try to allow staff to sort of, be open about it, and we do our best to support them having a wellness approach. But it's hard. It's hard, and that's why I think it's really important. What I try to model is that we just need to care and really care for each other, truly, and we'll get through this together. And that's what we're doing. But it's not been easy for our staff. But thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. We'll take one last question to round up this segment. Anyone? Any of the panelists have any last words or wisdoms to share as we close out this segment?
Well, no, I just want to thank Geoffrey for inspiring us. I always said I met Geoffrey, he doesn't remember, almost 30 years ago, and I can't believe it. We're here, and now we have the opportunity to continue this promise. Again, remember, this is something we have to really believe in. I'm going to challenge every person here, and I know all of you care, to figure out a way how you're going to join us, to make sure we see every child, to make sure we can support our school districts so they can succeed, to make sure we support our teachers, our staff, our community-based partners, everyone. This is the way we're going to turn things around. We're going to do it. Thank you.
Yes, and I just want to reinforce that and really extend my appreciation to Geoffrey for being this beacon in your work. It is seminal, it is legendary, dare I say. And also, I think just so inspiring to be here and share the space with you today. And we do hope you feel better. And I want to thank all of our panelists, this time for real. Please join me in thanking them for their time today.
And I want to say one last thing too. I couldn't have imagined, 20 or 30 years ago when I started my career, that I would be working with such brilliant people, such people with such values that I really respect. And I've worked with you, all of you on the panel, and many of you in the audience, and I just have to say I'm really proud to work with you. You're amazing. You're a dream team, and I'm excited about where we go together. So thank you all for being here. And I don't know, Geoffrey, do you want to say a final word?
I do. I just want to say that it's a real honor to be partners with you all in this work, and I can just say the William Jennings Wilson Institute team is there. And just for your information, we have one of the top K-12 people in the nation that just has joined our efforts, Kristen Rhodes, who was senior advisor to the Secretary of Education, Secretary Cardona. So we're all in. We want to help. We want to support you all. We want to share whatever we learn anywhere in the nation so that your work gets better. But it's just been a great honor to be part of this effort. Looking forward to more.
Thank you.